Good evening, TNT family. We are back with Mr. Suman Singh on Yellow is the Code, and we will be discussing some of the things that transpire in TNT during the day this evening, especially with our press conference and the Prime Minister and her team there. And we are very impressed to see how the Prime Minister is handling herself, how her team is handling themselves, and how things have been structured. So I must congratulate our Prime Minister on how she is conducting things. And one of the things I'm very amazed about is her demonstration and how to say introduction about work from home, something that's been happening here years in the United States and very much needed if we're going to help reduce the unnecessary traffic on the road and create more convenience and efficiency for people and country. So those are the within the primitive way of thinking. We're in for an upgrade, and the prime minister is setting that example. I'm very impressed with her introduction about working from home, and she also set the tone that do not test her because she's moving full throttle ahead. And so, Mr. Singh, I want to welcome you back to UNC USA, and hopefully, all other members of the team will join us later on. So, how are you doing? What's your opinion? What took place there, Mr. Singh? I have a
Good.
question though. I do not quite understand the role of the parliamentary secretary, and I saw David Nakid was sworn in today, and I was more looking for minister in the ministry, but I do not understand that category. So maybe you can explain that a little bit to us.
All right. Good evening to our listeners on the mainstream media and all those in social media platforms as well. You're welcome to be with us, and we're happy to have you. Yes, Gary, what I was, like yourself, deeply impressed with the Prime Minister today. She took it to another level. And this is something good for the country from the point of view that she laid out the situation. That's what, in short, means she laid out the context and she laid out the situation and what are the real not dynamics of the situation. I'll touch on the parliamentary secretaries in a while. But this aspect is very, very interesting to me in that by laying out these, you know, procedures and protocols. So let's say, how does the government rent a property? First, it has to be approved. The property has to meet certain criteria as far as security goes and, construction goes and so on, the type of construction and the build out of these facilities, especially now with, services within, because it's easy to build a building, a shell, and have it as it is there. But the build out also takes a lot of financing, the maintenance, the security aspects, the parking, all these things have to be considered. And but here it is. Some properties have been rented without cabinet approval. No, that by itself is a very interesting and cause of concern.
Welcome back, Rambro.
Yes, hi, hi. How are you doing, guys? What's up?
Welcome, Dobby. Yes,
Very impressive press conference. Go ahead, Suman.
yes. Doug, I was just reiterating some of the things in the press conference this evening. But as I was saying, some rentals have been done without any cabinet approval, and other instances show that rentals were done without leases, and all leases were made after the expiration of the contracts on a month-to-month basis. So there are three scenarios. Now, the funny thing is that the permanent secretaries or his or her designate is the head of the accounting division in any ministry. That's her role. She is the head of the accounting department. And if she's renting a property or approving the rental of a property without any contracts or any leases or any cabinet notes, then she's culpable. And
Yeah,
this is a way
my
you can,
mistake. I was trying to refer to parliamentary secretary. I'm sorry, parliamentary secretary. Well, you get to that down the line. Anyway, go ahead.
and this is very stark information. In fact, I wish, it is my fervent wish, that the offending permanent secretary should be brought to bear, because without a contract means the monies could have been expended and nobody knows. And that is what creating a wide variations on the total rental bill for the government. It's estimated at pretty close to $500 million. It could be more. That is just for last year. That is just for 2024. So a lot of leakages in the system, and one wonders where that money went and who, I should say, in whose coffers is that lying. Because the permanent secretaries should be held culpable for any, inconsistencies there. Because when the UNC is in power, they make sure all the T's and I's are crossed and dotted. It's a different rule when the PNM is there. The permanent secretaries can do whatever they want and get away scot-free.
People, right now, something bad just happened. I'm coming over.
Yeah, so that is the first thing I wanted to touch on, Gary. The UNC has room to incriminate a lot of permanent secretaries if they were found in breach of that regulation.
Yeah, so I wanted an explanation. The parliamentary secretary position is not something I'm too familiar with, but we saw a bulk of unexplained spending with the PBR situation there, and also with the rental of the properties, non-disclosed of who who the landlord is, who the beneficiary of these government-funded rentals, and these are things that is going to come out. You see, they thought they would continue to maintain this way that they were going, and the people gave them a surprise in the country. So I want to congratulate those who came out to vote in changing the game on the PNM. And seeing the amount of work, Dr. Rambo, seeing the amount of work being done by our local government, and the amount of things that they have to clear out the way, that you can see basically um, what there's much to be explained by Faris and Rohanson, and then as to what they did with our money, because there's so much to be done.
Agreed.
Mr. So Dr. Rambo, I mean, maybe we could
Yeah,
jump in a little bit. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I saw Barry called out the ODPM too, and there's some other things to go to discuss. But go ahead.
yeah. I saw some of the drains being cleaned today in Chaguanas East, and it was amazing. The amount of grass and rubbish. It was terrible. One really wonders, out of all that money they collected from the land tax and house taxes, what really, where that money really went to. It will be interesting to find out, because I mean, I'm very surprised. It's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, I would have expected. I mean, I I mean, I would have expected a certain amount of drainage to be cleared by government, coming up. This is May. We in the rainy season, right? And elections were held in May. So which means that one would have expected that work would have been started in some of these areas before. When you look at some of these drains that are not being cleaned, I mean, it is really, really suggesting a sort of inequitable, or a very, a very, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is a country of Trinidad and Tobago, it was always a cosmopolitan country. We are very diverse. We must be proud of our heritage. We have people who live with each other. We have much culture here. We share so much. There's so much tolerance. I mean, sometimes you wonder how, compared to other countries, how we are blessed. And to think that, I mean, what has been perceived now in WASA, what has been perceived now in local government, just by cleaning the drains, that clearly there was some sort of prioritization based on voting. And if this is the case, then I know that in a number of the UNC hard core areas that there were quite a lot of PNM votes as well. So it's not to say that there were not PNM supporters in the areas that they apparently were not cleaning these drains. I mean, I have to say it because it's glaring. I mean, if people don't want to say it, it has to be said. Unfortunately, I mean, as I said, I spent 10 years and I'm just unbelievable that what I'm seeing now, just with drainage and what is happening with water supply, it seems clearly that there was, I mean, I wouldn't say victimization, that's a big word, but clearly there was some prioritization as to where and who would have gotten water and who would have gotten their drains clean. I mean, it is amazing, you know?
But Doc, Barry has some information that's going to be Wasa has to bring it to the public domain that he quoted there on, and that information spells out bold-faced discrimination and bold-faced spite. And I
Uh,
was expecting it. I was expecting it. I just could hardly wait. And knowing that 2010 when we turned on those, discovered those valves were being lowered by Spike. In spite of the infrastructural deterioration and neglect, there was deliberate actions conducted by the PNM to slow the flow of water and prevent people and suffer people.
yeah. Yeah,
And
I mean, what you say, as I said, I'm still in a state, I am actually still in a state of belief. It will be very interesting to hear the response of the relevant politicians, who are dealing with the issues like PNM and WASA.
yes, and the excuse they give is that there's a lot of old lines running through the southern areas so that they cannot put pressure on the lines again. Well, for 10 years, how many lines you replaced? You can count it as a start. And water was used as a political weapon to divert from UNC areas to other areas. So that in itself compounds lend coverage to the area of geographic discrimination.
Yeah, on the question of the rental and the issues with the permanent secretaries, I do have as I said, I think we spoke about this before. In my experience, this was the case. I remember when I went into national security, met with the permanent secretaries. I was met by a very lovely permanent secretary. She was very helpful in that at the ODPM, when we started to try to follow the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee, because today I had mentioned on the news in response to Minister Barry Padarat's comments on the ODPM. I was given the opportunity to answer a few questions as to why, what I thought about the comments, and I did indicate that I support him fully, because the ODPM, within the last 10 years, didn't seem to have any sort of visibility when it came to disaster management in the country. They were doing good work. I'm positive because, I mean, it's an organization that I left in 2017, but I left it with a good system, a good organizational structure. I'm not sure what is the current competencies and tasks related skills base that they have there now, but clearly, they must have been doing some degree of work, but not enough, because the degree of public perception at the time when I came in 2011 to when I left in 2017 was much better than the public perception now, which is obviously coming to a head. Now, one of the things I met in the ministry was the permanent secretaries who came after the initial permanent secretary that I had, who started me to look at situations such as rental of the property that we were renting in, contracts that we had that had been organized by the previous CEO and were continued on a month-to-month basis because for some reason the contracts did not go back to the ministry for approvals. Plus, the amount that were being tendered was in excess of my limit, which I was allowed. I was allowed $500,000 a year in any one area of engagement, so that anything in excess of $500,000, the permanent secretary had to do that contract. We couldn't do contracts. Contracts had to be done at the ministry because we were just a division of the Ministry of National Security. So we had the ability to do month-to-month engagements and justify why we needed it in lieu of the contracts being done. But you wouldn't believe that it took us, I would say that from 2011 to 2017, when I left there, the proposals that we had made for contracts, the tendering processes that we had initiated, the tender documents that we had sent down to ministry for approval, it was as though we were hitting a brick wall because we were not getting them approved. When we talked about dollars and cents and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, this was what they were doing to me and my team when I sent down documents to the ministry for dealing with it. So what I'm pretty amazed of when we heard what has been said by the cabinet today, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, is that what seems to be working for Peter doesn't work for Paul. Because I was actually so intrigued by the level of efficiency and effectiveness to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, block most of my requests for contract signing, rental agreements, and everything. And I was only able to do anything in ODPM for almost 5 or 6 years on a month-to-month basis. And this, of course, I came under a lot of problems with the ministry. And when we left in 2017, and the PNM came into power, of course, in 2016, during the course of time, there were much, questions as to why it is that I was giving month-to-month contracts. And the answer to that was because of the bureaucracy at the Ministry of National Security, and the fact that the permanent secretaries had the responsibility, but for some reason it was not being done. I mean, we had a team, we had a procurement team, we did our tenders and everything else according to the tender rules at the time. We went out and we got 4 quotations, we did evaluations, we did the categories, the criteria, we made the recommendations, and we sent down the documents. And once it's within my limit, the permanent secretary would have taken our advice because we were the experts. There were many instances, for example, when we asked for certain items, we did the tenders within my limit as a CEO. And when it went down to the permanent secretary, they said, well, hey, they sent the documents to other agencies such as the military to justify why we at the ODPM, being the subject matter experts in disaster risk reduction, they sent the documents to other ministries, other departments, for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, disaster team or disaster unit, or some officer there who had, I don't know what experience they had in disaster risk management, because disaster risk reduction is a science. It is something that you go to university and do a course in. It's not something that you just say, oh, I'm a disaster expert because I took part in 3 disasters. It's not like that. Again, it isn't so. It's a science. It's a course that has to be done. And you have to be qualified and capable of doing things or tasks related to disaster risk reduction. It's a science, and sometimes it's a big course, about 2 years, 3 years course. They're certificate courses. So when things like that went to other divisions, then we are the scientists at the ODPM who worked with me were astounded, and they were confounded. They were confused. What was happening? So when you look at that level and that high level of oversight and accuracy, and then when you hear things like in the last government, you have people renting without contracts, you have persons who you don't even know how. There's no name on the master list, but yet rent is being paid. Bus route passes that have been issued to people. I mean, I saw I don't know if it's a cricketer, but it's the surname Pollard when I was looking on the screen. I mean, there were two Pollards and they had about 4 vehicles, and I assumed that it was a bus route pass for 2 vehicles for a cricketer. So it was amazing that these things could happen. And I remember when we were in ODPM, we were allowed as a CEO a bus route pass, and I was stopped many occasions on the bus route, and we were even questioned as to the validity of our pass. Even though I was the CEO and I was one of the emergency divisions of national security, a divisional head of national security. I mean, I sat at the National Security Council. You understand? So it is interesting, very interesting, that this sort of double standards is allowed to happen. And I'm hoping, we had a discussion before, guys. Remember, Mr. Singh, we
Yeah.
talked about
Yes.
the need to ensure by this government that this nonsense doesn't happen again. And I see from the tone and from the way and manner in which our prime minister is dealing with this issue, she's taking no nonsense. You see what she told Yui, and it was quite clear. All
Yes.
after 10 years, you hear nothing about that campus. I mean, I every time I come down to turn to come to my home, which is just about 5 minutes, 3 minutes away from the campus, and I come down off the ramp in Davie, and I see on the left of me this nice sports ground. When I was looking at it, the ground was beautiful. It was a pavilion that it just had about, oh my God, just a few items needed again back in the pavilion. It needed to be painted, and it was already fenced. It was a beautiful little area for the students in the campus to come. And when you look at the grass and the thick shrubs and the vines that actually grew in that, it hurt me. It hurt me as a person who lives in this country, and it's unbelievable that this was allowed to happen. And I could imagine Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa when she was going home, coming from anywhere and coming down, and she looking at that. I mean, she must have been so angry, to have all of that and to see all of that. So I can feel that anger.
Doc, but the University of the West Indies, after Dr. Munilal put out those photos, they went and posted a picture about some classroom looking beautiful and trying to contradict Dr. Munilal, and some of the reporters asked if they could come see it. So the invitation is open to our reporters to go with Dr. Munilal to visit the campus.
Yeah, again, you see the level of nonsense, and this is why I know that we talked about it, is that the reason why we need to start campaigning for 2030, 35 is that we have the people, we have the technology, we have the ability now that the UNC has won the election, that they need to start with this campaign now. And I mean, they need to start counteracting all the negative social media, whether it's on traditional media or social media, in all of the areas of social media. They need to start counteracting these nonsense sort of posts immediately. It is something that needs to be done. And you have already won the election. So I know right now we're still in a sort of teething stage where we're doing assessments, but I hope that very soon that we should stop fighting an election when we are addressing the public now. Okay, it's over. We've won. So let us now concentrate now on what we're going to be. I mean, I know the passion. I know we are angry, but hopefully within the next few months, when the election sort of fever is over, that we stop fighting the election. Some too many times we go into the 5 years and we keep fighting the PNM. We already won, and I think that now, I mean, the UNC already won. Now is the time that we need to make statements that say what we are going to be doing, and how soon we're going to be getting it done. Don't get angry and. Because with them now, we have already won. So now we're going to put them to task, say why you did this, prove to us why you did it, and we hope to God that it wasn't discrimination, right? Nepotism. It wasn't equitable, right? We have to take them to task,
I think our Prime Minister certainly intends to do that. Suman, you want to join in here for a second?
Yes, I agree with Doc, but I'd like to go one step further. The people in charge of the ministries, again, I reiterating, is not the minister, it's the permanent secretaries. And they sometimes they deliberately hold back projects and sometimes they rush it through. It all depends. In the case when the UNC was there, they, as I said, they crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. They stick to the rules of the public service. Nothing was breached. So any sort of expenditure had to be, from the correct votes, the correct allocation. It was justified. It fell within the strategic plan of what that particular ministry. In other words, you have to justify every single action or expenditure which you take in. And then and only then will the permanent secretary sign off on it when she has no other queries. No. Look at it for the past 10 years. Simple thing. You cannot rent, the government cannot rent a property not knowing who the owner is. Is that possible at all? Can they rent a property if there are no lease contracts to say this lease covers from the period January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025? Was any period identified? Where are the contracts, these approved contractual leases? Where are they? Where are the cabinet approvals for these leases? So if this is the case, if this is what transpired and the permanent secretaries failed to do these things time and time and time again, then there should be some action taken against them. Because I'll tell you what, I'm seeing that if you have the same people to administer projects, and if they don't have the capability or they going to deliver projects based on spite, then you're going to get the same results. And this is what bothers me more than anything else with the implementation of the manifesto, the strategic plans, development plans of the UNC, because you cannot get different results by having the same people, technical officers, your advisors, existing personnel, same PSS, same AO5, same AO4s, and expect different results. So that's my trend of thought right now. And I think the Prime Minister came down really good on these people. Let them ship out, shape up or ship out. No one is going to hold back the delivery. So especially, she was also mentioning something about some persons do not want to have their names on the leases. And she made it quite clear. Once public expenditure, is committed to what's paying leases, that's public money. So then the public has a right to know who this money is going towards. So these are the systems I always talk about. The systems, the structure, the policies, governance. These are things that has to be straightened out. And on top of that, I keep on telling the same thing almost in every program. Every single ministry structure is broken. Everything is broken. So everything has to be reworked and fixed again for them to even make a start. You name, tell me one ministry that functions properly, one state, enterprise that functions properly. Every one of them is found guilty of breaching the laws. So it cannot be the same old thing again, man. With respect to the DB campus, Dr. Molina said there was the Roytech is a private institution that teaches mostly business courses. So wherever they occupied, they kept their classrooms in order. But barring that, the rest of the campus is in utter disrepair, as you can see in the photos.
Well, Dr. Mulilal, invite the press. So they want to come and see. I understand there was a company called Roytech that kind of fixed up the part of the university for usage, but the majority of the campus was neglected, right? And this is what we're seeing. There's some more forensic investigations going to be taking place with how our finance was spent. So I am very proud to see how our team is handling the job there, and also how they're dealing with the flooding issues.
Yes, they're very focused on what they wanted to do, Gary, and I'm glad to see that this is happening today. As I say, the truth shall always come to light, and it's beginning to happen to a much greater extent than we could have just imagined. All these breaches were taking place, and they wanted to know where the money was going, where we'll find financing and this sort of thing. Well, we see where the money was going, and not accountability for it, because everything, there was overruns on everything. The master list of all government rental properties doesn't add up. So where's the variance, and who approved those variances for rentals?
Far too much unexplained spending.
Yes, correct. That's putting it mildly. I will go further and say too, monies have been swindled along the way. So when the Auditor General does the report, then you will see.
You see that? You see the evidence. You see the evidence already, and we didn't get to the bottom of everything yet. We just started getting started.
No, not people has to be taken to task. You just cannot leave them there like same old. They have to be punished or incriminated or whatever it is, charged for fraud, whatever the law says.
I can hardly wait to see what nonsense they're going to come in the parliament with to chastise this government. They don't even have the morality to speak here. They don't have the morality to speak here, because you've seen all evidence from the maintenance of the country, the lack of accountability, the level of discrimination. Welcome, Nadira.
Yes, and I also read of the comments of the university president, or the person who all of a sudden became active when this government came into being. Before that, the 10 years they were pretty dormant on all these issues, and they are proposing areas of study which were not authorized by the partnership, by the UNC, sorry. So I don't know how that will pan out. I see the Prime Minister made no bones about it today in the press conference to indicate, well, who approved this, that we doing this sort of studies and that sort of studies. She listed out the benefits of having the university in DB. Yes, benefits to the parents, benefit to the students, benefit to the tertiary sector of education, and show that after 10 years, many more graduates we should have had in this country. And this would have upgraded our labor force, but a skilled labor force, which at this point in time could have attracted a lot more foreign investment to set up shop in Trinidad.
Well, we saw money spent under this government that was not designated to create investment and revenue stream. We saw money spent to pacify people, for their own personal greed, their own selfishness. They was not there for people and country. They did not invest in our people. They didn't invest in creating any revenue stream. They did more to suppress our people. And there is very blatant, bold-faced discrimination against the people in the Southland and Central, and there is a level of thinking that is so, I mean, it's so ignorant. We didn't have government for all the people. We saw that clearly. I mean, when the situation happened with the divers or anything happened in the southern area or the central area, you didn't see the prime minister or his ministers showing up, you know. But I mean, I can hardly wait. There's more coming. There's more coming.
Yes, and I wish to really see the exposure and bring those culpables to bear, because if you let them go, it will create that same concept of
Not the Strongs. I don't want to see that the Strongs at all. Not the Strongs. They have to be held accountable.
held accountable with the relevant punishment that goes with it. Like if you're a public servant, let your pensions and gratuity and so on should be seized. So whatever the law prescribes, that follow suit. Yes, because the same people who you're trusting to, for you to go ahead with your development plans are the same people who will stymie all operation. So
all the big talk. All the big talk. What are we seeing? Totally the opposite.
yes.
All the debates spun in the parliament, right? And now you're seeing the TTPS is ready to collaborate and work with citizens who want to apply for an FUL. We didn't see that before, all of a sudden. I mean, they're getting busy.
Yeah. The funny thing, like Transparency International woke up as well. I don't know if you saw that.
I missed that one.
Yeah, they were sleeping all these years. All of a sudden.
Yeah. Okay. I don't understand what you're saying. Yeah, everybody's gonna find a voice. And there's some idiot trying to chastise Mrs. Visesa for working from home. Oh boy, I'm happy the way she put it to them today. And yes, we do need to work on that, because that gives mothers the opportunity to handle their children and other things too, and not beat unnecessary traffic. You see, we don't take any consideration for what a woman has to go through, especially as a mother. All right, I mean, she has to work, she has to cook, and she has a woman basically runs the home. And there's a lot of responsibility we take for granted. So why do we want to add more pressure on a woman in the first place? We should be lifting that burden, trying to make life easy.
And mind you, the press wasn't of much help during the PNM time, but now they've suddenly found their voices, and all of them.
Yeah, they're growing some teeth now. They're growing some teeth.
Yeah, all of them on a sudden found their voices to ask questions, irrelevant questions, the hard questions, so to speak. And that is the correct role of the press, to ask a hard question. During the PNM time, they would just either shut up or ask easy things, which everybody knows, So then would never.
You didn't want to offend the bulldog that was running the country.
That's right, correct. Or make a minister look bad. You dare not do that. But now I see them clapping and so on at the end. You don't know whether it's a real clap or a fake clap, but they suddenly found their voices. They want to go and see the DV campus all of a sudden. They want to go and see the Cuba Hospital all of a sudden. What were they doing all the time? Where was the investigative reporting all the time? Simple thing like the spanking new airport in Tobago, 50% cost overruns, 50%. Anybody did any investigation into that? If Wade-Mart did not bring that aspect of the airport overruns, no press. We would not have known, what is really going on there. And respect to approvals, but that's another story. They don't know if the airport there will be able to open and function because of, international regulations especially with proximity of houses and so on, due to the closeness to the airport, especially the runway. Some houses are just on 20, 30 feet from the perimeter of the airport. And that's not allowed in airport construction anyway. They always say between 250 to 500 meters away from the perimeter wall. And that's why you'll find certain international airlines refusing to come into Tobago because of those restrictions. People can, I don't know if you know, they can flash their lights, from the sun, mirror reflection on the cockpit and so on. You can literally take a slingshot and shoot and send it right into the runway when a plane is taxiing. That's why they have these 250 to 500 meters limitation. And you can Google it and see. You can Google that and see. So all these breaches, I don't know how that is going to get approval. On check is a $1.5 billion investment with just a shell. So these things, I'm glad things starting to come out and come out in the open. And I think we should hold those culpable for this, misdemeanors, man. This is no longer a misdemeanor. This is an act of sabotage to the TNT economy. Anything else? Well, we forgot to mention, Gary? Doc, anything you think about?
Well, yeah, one of the things that I was pretty interested with is the persons that they are sending back from the U.S. And I heard that the Minister of Defense talk about the one that particularly interested me was the swabbing, the DNA testing, and the sharing of information with the US databases and of course the European databases, Interpol, and all of these different databases. And I am wondering. As I said, I haven't been in the. I remember when the UNC was in government, People's Partnership, as the head of the ODPM, I was one of the advisors of the National Security Council. They included myself as one of the advisors, and I was also part of my team used to attend the what we call the ITAC, the Threat Assessment Committee, right? So we had a threat assessment committee that was actually also advising the National Security Council's Secretariat. So there was a lot of discussions on things like DNA. At the time, it wasn't as much, but sharing of these databases with international databases that exist in terms of crime and criminals, in the world. Because I mean, the world is a small place now. Everybody can get connected and move from state to country to country very easily if your border controls are not as strict. I remember I have a relative of mine who, they had a court case in Canada, and there was they didn't have the hearing as yet, but this came up, and when that person was trying to leave Canada and enter into the U.S. on the border, they were stopped and turned back because of that case that was pending. Yes. So
Yes.
I mean, you have that degree of connectivity, with border control and Ministry of Justice, if you were to put it that way, so that anyone who has a case that is pending or judgment or anything else, and you go to check in at the airline counter in Piaco or in Tobago, you're not allowed to leave because you have certain restrictions to your travel, right, embedded in that judgment or in that case that you have to appear for in terms of any criminal act. So I mean, I the use of the DNA, I'm very, very passionate about that. I mean,
Yes.
I spent 4 years of my life after ODPM trying to figure out, since I wasn't employed, by the last government in any way, I decided with my children's help, my family, to go and do some more postgraduate work. And I did a master's in forensic medicine because I thought that, there would have been a need in this country to upgrade the death investigation component of the whole crime fighting efforts, in that, as a doctor, a trauma surgeon, a man who had a healthcare management master's, MBA in healthcare management, that I had to find something that maybe in my retirement years I can offer something to the country, in terms of this, because this is a major problem all over the world, crime. So here it is, you spend 3 years and you do forensic medicine, you come back, and you have all of this knowledge that you can share. And 4 years have gone, and repeated begging, to say, hey, give me something to do, even if it's pro bono. Let me sit down at the
Yeah.
Forensic Science Center. Let me come and assist you with postmortems. You know what I mean? Let me just do something for you guys. No one even pick up the phone and call back or send me back an email or a WhatsApp.
No,
You
no,
know, you
no.
know what I mean? So it's as though nobody wanted our help. And I am hoping that with this government, that there are certain things, like, for example, this DNA database. I mean, we have a number of district medical officers, right, who are from the old coroner system, the old British system, where a district medical officer will visit a death, right,
Mhm.
whether it's a natural death or intentional death, or an accidental death, or, of course, a homicide. And they would make an investigation of the body and declare that the person has been certified, and declare the removal of the dead.
Mhm.
Now, the thing about it is that everybody knows that they are DMOs. Somebody dies at home in Trinidad, the relatives have to contact the police. The police would contact the DMO, and the DMO would actually come and certify the body, or connect with a doctor who has been attending this person on a regular basis. And if that doctor wants to give the death certificate, the doctor will come out and certify, right? Or if it's a hospital doctor, or is a patient who in the clinic, or if there's any questionable or pecuniary interest, then of course the DMO will come out, because the DMO is basically the medical examiner. But the,
Right.
the, the problem
But
is that,
doc, in that
yeah,
case, a lot of the diagnosis is not truthful. It's just to give a generalization of the death. It's not actually what that can be truthful.
right. So basically, what happens is that the DMO will come out and they will look at the scene based on their experience. They will determine whether it's an homicide, or, and if it's an accidental death or whatever it is. And normally, an investigation by the forensic technicians would be required. So then the forensic techs will be called out to look at the scene, do the investigation, take the swabs, take the evidence, take the blood, whatever, they take the swabs. Then it goes up to Forensic Science Center. So the actual DMO's job is basically to certify. But what happens is that if the DMO is not properly trained in forensic medicine, if he's not trained as a medical examiner, right? For example, a person may have been moved, after he has been
Mhm.
after a homicide has occurred, from one point to the other. The death itself, if the body is moved by anybody who comes or the scene, and turns the body, right? So a lot of times the skill of the DMO has to reach the level that the actually initial scene of the examination is very, very important in the overall report, expert report, that will come later on if there's a case to be submitted by the prosecutor, right? In the event that somebody is caught for the act. So that what I'm trying to say is that there's a certain amount of training that has to be imparted. When the deceased or the decedent goes to the forensic pathologist or the pathologist, right, and they now will do the more detailed analysis of whether the body was a homicide, a cardiac arrest that caused the guy to lose control of the vehicle and run into another vehicle and kill somebody in the vehicle. All of these things, the forensic pathologist or the pathologist will be able to give further details. But the initial scene investigation, where the DMO is called to do the death investigation and order the removal or the forensic examination if there is any sort of suggestion that it was a homicide, all right, or even intentional suicide, that the decedent would have further examination. So my statement right now is that there's a need for forensic training. I'm hoping that the UE Deve campus or the Deve campus, if the Prime Minister is not happy with UE's efforts to assist them, and she removes the whole campus and brings it under the control of the government, forensic medicine can be taught to our district medical officers. So when they visit the scene, you have a better scene examination, right, by these doctors. And of course, I'll be happy to assist in that regard. So the point about it is that there are things that we can do. The next thing, of course, is the DNA swabbing or the DNA database, right? And in my opinion, and I'm not sure if it has been done, but every single criminal, every single person who has been arrested by the police, when they enter into the police station, right, they should be offered either voluntary or non voluntary or mandatory swabbing, and they should start building this database, because if you look at the percentage of persons who repeat crimes, right, later on, it's a high percentage, even in our country. So a lot of these persons might be released, some of them on bail, and then these people also go on to do further criminal acts later on. And statistically, it's a very significant proportion of the criminals that are arrested and had previous arrests. You understand? So building that database, and of course, I mean, on this airwave, you know that somebody can say, okay, I approve. You can take my swab, but there is also persons who say I am not going to allow you to take my DNA, right? And this is where other things like touch DNA, the cup that you're drinking, and the cigarette that you've been offered, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I would go into it further, but those are once it goes in the garbage, it's the property of the state, and they can take your DNA, right? So the thing about it is that we need to start building this DNA database, and I even suggest it's such a small country of 1.3 million people that at a very early stage in our life, when you start looking at some of your schools and whatever, you begin, like in some of the other countries, to identify persons who are and have a tendency, right, to
Potentially, yeah.
actually, to be deviant in school, to be bullies and all of these things. And I think that even from that, if you can get parental consent once they're under the age of 16, right, and you can get consent, take their DNA and start building up the database, you see. So this is something that I think that really and truly we need to revise some of the DNA legislation that was approved in this country. And I think that we need to look at some of the municipalities having these private labs, which are CSI labs, crime scene investigation labs, which could support the forensic science and the South Campus, the South UE campus, or the South Campus, and have the forensic examination, or the forensic unit there, as one of the things that we can do.
Yeah, Daddy, you're training people, to do the job and to do it right. Because I mean, a lot of people there, we know. I mean, based on what I've seen, I live outside the country, and the little I've seen, I have no confidence in them.
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of courses that can be given to lay people as well as doctors. For example, forensic medicine can be taught to quite a lot of doctors who right now, after they finish their internship, they are struggling to get jobs. And of course, as you see what's happening with the geopolitics, it's going to be very hard to get into the United States. I mean, the President Trump is even saying only citizens of the US might have to go to Harvard. So when you start
Right.
looking at what is happening in Canada, where they're stopping a lot of people from coming into the universities globally, in Europe as well, in Germany, and most of these countries are going back into strong nationalism and far left. So what is happening is that you're going to have Trinidad and Tobago graduates who are coming out of medical school, and this is why I'm very supportive of the Honorable Prime Minister. Why are you having a medical school in the South? You already have medical graduates in UE in St. Augustine, and you don't have jobs for them, right? So the thing about it is that this is all part of the basic lack of strategy that we are seeing. So if, for example, quite a lot of these doctors who realize that there is a future in crime fighting, right? It's not just Trinidad, it's throughout the Caribbean, because you now have forensic pathologists that needs to be trained in this country. We have people who are coming in from India, and no disrespect to anybody, but I'm looking at some of the criteria, the qualifications and whatever. There's a lot to be done. We need to have forensic pathologists, trained forensic pathologists. We have forensic psychologists, right? We have other persons who are not doctors, can be trained in forensic photography, forensic microbiology, forensics botany, right? All of these things, when you move a body from one point to another place, a lot of things on the body can give you an identification of where that person was before, from some of the grass fragments that might be there, or the animal hair that might be there, meaning that it could be somewhere else, and you could go back to the home and find out if he was killed at home and brought there, if there were dogs there, and you can compare the hair. Now, I'm talking about forensics anthropology, forensics looking at the examination of the teeth, for example, for doctors, odontology, forensics archaeology, right? Teaching people like we have right now why it is that one group of persons, hunters, search and rescue, are finding bodies, right? And when you have people like the police looking for bodies, they can't find it, but the hunters, search and rescue are finding it. There's a whole course on how to identify clandestine graves. Looking at how you if you look at the vegetation, the way the grass is, you can identify shallow burials, and there's training for that. Forensics analysis of blood, right? Teaching doctors and young doctors and prosecutors. They have the courtroom that Dr. Monilal talked about in the South Campus, which is like a court, so that you can actually teach doctors how to go and stand up in court and give evidence, teach forensics technicians, prosecutors, for example, young police officers who go to court, and sometimes just because they don't know how to do it and how to make a conversation in court, they don't know the protocols of court. All of these things are courses that could be done at the South Campus.
They don't know how to recognize evidence also, and how to collect it and preserve it. And a lot of the times they contaminate the evidence scene.
Correct. That's one of
So
the problems. So the crime scene examination or the crime scene investigation is something that is extremely important, even from the first police officers or the first officers that come on the scene, whether it be the fire services or whether it be the police officers. And a lot of them are not trained in forensics. So sometimes they come there, and a lot of things that they may do may affect the crime scene, and it can affect, and it does affect the actual case later on when it goes to court.
The outcomes of the case, it's
so
very
there is a lot that can be done to improve the crime. My component of it is, I'm 63 now, all right, and I'm hoping that between 63 and 83 I can still offer some degree of training, all right, for the these people, and from where I am, as you know, it's not too far from the campus where I'm just next to the Honorable Prime Minister, walking distance, and from here to the campus, I'm actually just a short cycle away. I could actually take my bicycle and ride down there. You know what I mean? It's so close.
Which will be good cardio exercise for you.
Correct.
Yes, but I mean, your skill, doc, is so much needed in the country, and it is so heart wrenching to see the politics obstructing the progress of the country, and we cannot have that. We cannot allow that, and we cannot have that at all. Zero tolerance.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. As I said, I came out of the University of Florida in 2022, right? It's 2025, right? And I have been sending in my requests. I've even gone so to say I'll do it pro bono, just to relook at the current coroner system that we have, and to possibly improve it to a coroner/medical examiner system, so that some of the young doctors can become assistant medical examiners. You know what I mean? And that the coroner, their DMOs can be trained to become medical examiners. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just adding a degree of competency and skills that brings up the death investigation. And homicide is a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago. It affects the society's fabric, and the more homicides we have, the country's ill at ease, and it's one of the factors that it probably factored in the loss by the PNM.
Well, a lot of people have gone scot-free because we cannot gather the proper evidence and to hold the evidence, to prosecute them. So that's one issue.
Yes, the chain of evidence and that very important, to collect and store and to retrieve that information, of course, and the use of DNA again, DNA testing and the use of DNA in crime fighting, and the types of DNA that we're using now. I mean, we actually extracting DNA from little fragments, of bone or tissue, and now we're using source also, cloud DNA, where you can actually now go into the internet and try to go back now using ancestry, to find the culprit, using the open source DNA. So I mean, it's a whole new, field, and it's something that, I mean, I heard Wayne Sturge, the Honorable Minister of Defense, today talked about swabbing, and I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe, what you're talking about," and I am not sure how they are being briefed by the technocrats of the ministry, by the police service, who are advising them on what is being done, what has been done, what exists. And as somebody coming out of the university within the last 2 years, it'll be lovely for me to at least hear, and just give my perspective, my lens on the whole thing. Look through my lens.
Well, let's see where it leads to. I mean, they're just getting started. I know that they're in the right direction, and at some point you will get involved there somewhere or the other.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm hoping it's not that I need money. It's just to be, to just be an advisor. I mean, I'm just would like to sit down probably next to Minister Alexander, and just sit with him, in some of these meetings, and just, listen to what is being fed. Because the thing about it is that what will interest me is that, like it did in 2011 when I went, is that you would be hearing persons who worked in the system for the past 10 years, and at the end of the conversation they will convince you that they're doing the right thing. And because you're now in the middle of the forest, you tend to get caught up in it. And once you get in there now, it's very sometimes difficult to come back out and look at it from outside and say, oh my God, that's the forest and that's how it's looking. Because you get into it, and once you start meeting, you are convinced, literally, you are convinced that everything is working really good. You know what I mean? And there's no need for somebody like me to come outside and say, well, hey, what about this? What's it? What do you think about this? You know what I mean? So, yeah, right now it's the assessment phase, and we're willing to wait. But, hopefully when that phase is over and they do the gap analysis, right now I know, for example, a lot of ministers are meeting with the different agencies. I know that Minister Alexander is supposed to meet with ODPM. I saw that today in the newspaper, and when he does that, it will be interesting, to hear what ODPM has been doing in the last 10 years. The thing about it is that it would be nice for him to know what we left it at in 2016, 2017, when UNC lost the election in 2015. The PNM took over in 2015, and 2016, when I left in March of 2017, in that year, pretty much nothing much was being done, because it was just trying to investigate what we were doing in the last 5 years. It was just a year of investigation of all my transactions and whatever, whilst I was sitting in an office with no function, and a deputy CEO was sitting down doing everything as the CEO, and he wasn't even interviewed. He was just sent there by the PNM. So it'd be interesting to hear now that if something happens in ODPM, whether or not they were permanent secretaries, we had that discussion earlier in this talk, would come to the minister and say, no, you have to get Dr. Ramrup to go and do an interview. You can't have that as a government position. When they themselves approved the fact that 2 other persons were sent into the ODPM and the PNM reign, right, without even an interview. So this is the kind of double standards I am hoping that the ministers don't get involved with, you see.
Well, we know by what you're saying that they were trying to find something to make a case against you.
And they didn't. Yeah, I sat there for a year, and 10 years from then, I think nobody called me and nobody said, well, Dr. Ramrup, we have found this, because clearly I was trained properly. I did what I had to do properly. My procurement was above board, right? I did everything that I was supposed to do. I was very equitable in my dealings with everybody. I was a government official. I was not a politician, so to speak. because I was interviewed for a position. I reported to the permanent secretary. So the thing about it is that when you have a task and you have a role to play and you're given that, you do that to the best of your professional ability. And they did not have any problems. And the ODPM actually improved in the public's eye from 2011 to 2016, basically. And it all fell down. And I'll be very interested to hear what the minister has to find when he visits the ODPM, in the next week or so.
Mr. Singh, you want to add anything here at this moment?
No, I just concur with what Dr. Ramuk has said, because I am basically in the same situation. I'm willing to come back and prepare to contribute in whatever way I can, especially in the technology and data analytics and AI scope of field. So I see where the Ministry of Education is starting an AI sensitization among their teachers, carded for next Monday and Tuesday. So that's a step in the right direction, I think, for the students and teachers who are going to get laptops this coming school year. And I hope, something really good comes out of that little sensitization. But it's much more than sensitization that's required. You got to know what you're doing. The curriculum has to be so tweaked to foster greater development of the technology and AI segment, especially the mathematics curriculum. It should be mathematics with a focus on technology and AI. Like, good job, the minister. Some recommendations in doing that aspect of it. So I hope that takes care of that consideration. But I am here available. I'm willing to come back and offer my advice and see how best we can mobilize and get things being done. If we have to do it voluntary, that's not a problem.
Well, I'm sure as they get organized and they sort out things, you guys will fall in there at some point.
Well, let's hope so that things are not stymied by old processes and old ways of doing things. But I like to do things in a structured, organized way and linking it to output, my results. So I don't know if public servants or those in the public sector, if they don't share that view, then you run up against a brick wall, because you are doing something which you think is right and they are accustomed to the same old way of doing things. So if they don't share that vision of development along the lines identified by the UNC in their development plans, then we ain't going to get anywhere past at all. The problem I am seeing is the workforce. Definitely the workforce has to adapt to these changes, because everything now is technology driven. Everything now is technology driven, and you can use a knowledge base, your existing knowledge base, but you have to upgrade yourself. Dr. Ramgov said he didn't have to go and do what he did, but he tried to keep at the cutting edge of his field. The same thing with myself. I didn't have to do what I did. With 3 masters, I can live comfortable. But I did what I have to do because you see in the technological world that things like marketing has gone social media marketing. Data has been the tool for decision making. Artificial intelligence requires data of all things. Data is the fuel for artificial intelligence. So if these things are not propagated and your existing workforce does not know about these things or don't have a clue of how these things operate, what's going to happen? You'll be left alone in your own silo trying to make changes, and the rest of the people or your workers or who you are depending on to let's pull everything together and they are lacking the knowledge or the training, what's going to happen? You're just going to be stymied in your output.
Well, I am sure the Prime Minister has, is in the right direction, and at some point, she knows you guys, she knows what you're capable of. So eventually, as she sort things out, I mean, it's just 3 weeks she's in government there, and I know she have all the right intention, and she knows what her resources is. So eventually.
Yes, I hope so. I really hope so. And she is taking things in control, and I like that. I like her approach to dealing with the issues now. She has taken a no nonsense approach, and I share her ways of management, of how she manages the economy, the ministers, and what is expected of them, and any shortfalls are not to be tolerated. So that's good, and that's the way you manage.
Every man has to bat in their crease, right, Dr. Ramrock?
Yeah, it's going to be a good cricket match, See how it
Yes.
goes.
Exciting match.
Well, I said that it's going to be interesting. I mean, the thing is that when you really look at it, it has happened. It's going to be a thrilling ride ahead. Hopefully, some of us can actually play a very integral role in trying to get things better. I'm saddened by the fact that you had so much money that was spent, $500 million, almost $500 million, coming out of the public purse. And I mean, it would have been nice to have something to show for it, but I can't see, besides the highway that they fixed going up to Port of Spain, the airport shell that they did, maybe the extension of the highway down to Point, some of that. What else? The San Fernando, they did some work on the waterfront,
But that's 10 years. That's in 10 years you're talking about.
So this, like when you think about that, and the fact that a lot of schools were left to rot. UWI campus South was actually, overrun by bush. The Cuba Hospital was only used for COVID because they had to. They didn't have another place to go. So when you think about that, and you think that they were just trying to keep the country afloat with how many billions of dollars over the last 10 years, and then people, I mean, I live in Palmis next to the Honorable Prime Minister, and there were weeks I had no water. WASA was calling me every 2 days to pay a bill, which was coming on the dot every month. I have a commercial bill as well as a residential bill. So that's about $527 a month, plus $300 every 2 months. And I was getting calls every so often from WASA's customer service. And I had to be buying water almost every week. And 2,000 gallons of water was pretty much costing me about $800, every time I purchased water. So I was spending about $2,000-3,000 in water every month, in addition to paying $527 for my pool and my water rate, and $300 for my residential because I'm commercial residential. And here it is, I was just next to the Honorable Prime Minister living in Philippines. And now I can safely say over the past week, I've been getting water every day. So it's interesting.
Yeah, all of a sudden, but the headlines in the papers could say blows for Barry from Marvin Gonzalez. Blows, it should have been blows for Marvin.
Yes.
Right? And for the rest of our term, it's going to be blows for Marvin and the PNM for the level of wickedness that they did is beyond incompetence. This is beyond incompetence. This is high class, roll fist wickedness and spite.
That's only in Wassa, Gary. Could you imagine once they get into
Yeah.
the
I mean, that's
trenches
just
more
what's
and
about
more?
right throughout from the
Yeah,
campus, everything. Go ahead.
I said that's when as they get delve into a lot more ministries and so on, and you look at the contracts, you look at operations on various institutions, you begin to see, hey, this is where the leakage went, man. This is where the funds outflow of funds took place. And what about the accountability? And those who are responsible for accounting were not accounting for the expenditures. And we cannot allow these people to go scot-free. I would really like to see these people punished for their actions.
Yeah, the Trinidad and Tobago Media House, we have to call them out. We have to call them out, and all this political and racial prejudice and geographic discrimination, they had a lot to say about. I heard some talks today. I got a phone call about that David campus is only to benefit certain people.
Yeah,
Ones that are nonsense.
there
All the
was
garbage in their head, not thinking that it was a national uh, agenda with this and a national benefit for our country and international, regional, for the whole Caribbean especially. But it have a certain man in America seen about his country and we have to see about ours, right?
Yep, agreed. You see, President Trump today banned or Harvard from accepting international students. Harvard University.
Well,
No,
like I say, he taking care of his yard and I'm gonna take care of mine.
that's right. Who has to talk? Let them talk. But the PNM agenda is that only a certain segment of the population will benefit from the Day Bay campus. That is exactly true. What their notion of education was. I don't see how you can discriminate in education when all the people from the Southland, most of them from Moruga and La Brea, Point Fortin, Cedras, Palo Seco, Santa Flora, these people will say, they couldn't afford to send their children to UV because of the cost prohibitions. So having a campus down south will help everybody. It's not only one sector of the section of the community or one ethnic group, or is open to everybody. And not only that, by students going to the South Day Bay campus will open up a lot more vacancies for students in the northern, in the St. Augustine campus, in the northern part of Trinidad. So a lot more people can avail themselves of tertiary education. So I don't know that short-sightedness on behalf of.
There is a racial cabal in the PNM. And it have a big mouth lady there leading it. Right? We know all who she is, I don't have to call it. But what I'm saying to you, the amount of propaganda they spread about Mrs. Bisesa was being against black people and not taking care of them and we were being prejudiced against them, our government, all the lies. When you do look at it, when you finally do look at it, it was the other way around. And for the last 10 years, what did Dr. Rowley government do? It was spread all across in the United States, especially in New York, here in New York, because that carcass over here and this carcass over here, and then they brought a man there spreading, filled with lies about the PPG government. And it turned out to be which is the government that was doing the most discrimination. Let's call them out now.
But I'm glad as they get in more and more into the various ministries, operations, a lot of things will come into light. And we have
And there are
to,
people who align themselves with PNM, especially in this late stage of the game here, who tried to derail us, who was within our camp. I mean, they should be shame on themselves and go and bury their heads somewhere.
they will say they didn't know all these things were going on. But the fact is the fact. Until the Honorable PM didn't mention these things. No, we knew it was good, but not to the extent. We did not know the extent of which these things were happening. Even the simple thing as the rentals, government rentals. We know this one and that one get contracts to rent their property, but not to the extent which is now showing. The amount of money is involved, nearly $500 million, man. And some without contracts, some without approvals, some with a cabinet note.
The Prime Minister say all will be disclosed.
I'm so happy.
Everything will be disclosed. She's bringing it forward.
I'm really happy to hear that. So, and listen out to the public, let them see it for themselves, And as my contention is to have your PR and communications team going on these things, hitting on these things, and start to lay the groundwork for the next election as well. So,
well, if what we bring to the public and what we do for the public is not good enough, then God help us.
Yes, correct. So you remain right where you are. I remain right where I am. But what about your friends and family back home?
Okay, gentlemen. So I guess we can wrap it up tonight. I think is anything else you would like to add, Dr. Rambo? You have anything you want to bring forward?
I'm not sure if he's there, but I'm okay, Gary. We sort of covered everything that was discussed today. And I really look forward to listen to the meeting this evening for the 5 p.m. So that was very informative for me.
And to see our Prime Minister in full force, fully equipped, and heading in the right direction, So with that, I would say, good night, everybody. Go ahead, Mr. Singh.
We're looking forward to tomorrow's opening of Parliament as well.
Yes, there's a ceremonial part of it, and then they're going to decide on actual.
Yes.
So, good night, everybody. Thank you for joining, and see you tomorrow night, 8 o'clock.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye, guys. Good night. See you guys tomorrow.